Hey guys, now that the new Balance Dataslate is out, it's time to talk about the units that are extremely efficient now and should be definitely included in your new list, so without further ado, let's dive right in. First one is Ballistas Dreadnought. For 130 points, Ballistas was already a pretty damn efficient platform. I did not like him too much at 140. At the 130, I acknowledge the fact that, well, if you do have something like a Storm Speed or Hammer Strike available to give him +1 to wound, or if you have other ways to deal with enemy tanks that are more reliable, 3 Ballistas Dreadnoughts is an efficient way to have some shooting that your opponent will have to respect. It does not necessarily mean that there will be a reliable shooting, but it will be enough to, well, I'll just say, scare them from not moving into the open without repercussions. The best part about the Ballistas is its durability. 12 wounds at toughness 10 and 2+ save is not a bad profile. It's actually quite good for the price. And with 4 reasonably good anti-tank shots, with the crack missile being able to swap into the frag if you're fighting something like an orc horde or something, it's not bad. It still has cannons at 12, 3 damage d6 +1 and 2 crack missiles at strength 10 AP 2 damage d6. I don't like the AP 2 because any kind of cover on a normal 2+ save vehicle is going to absolutely ruin the chances of this missile doing anything, but it's still not bad. It has a pretty good rerolls to hit rule, which it won't be needing for Allan because you will be almost exclusively shooting these dreadnoughts into your new oath target, because you would always want to have the +1 to wound that you would get from the oath in addition to the reroll hits. And the +1 to wound changes the math on the Ballistas dramatically. Single Ballistas does about 3.7 damage to a toughness 12 3+ save tank in cover with rerolls to hit included, and it's 5 damage with +1 to wound. Believe me, if you feel like this is not enough of a difference, it is quite a big difference, and wounding on 4s and 5s is much worse than wounding on 3s and 4s. If you don't have rerolls to wound, every single breakpoint really matters, because the chances of you rolling those dice, even if the actual mathematical chance is not as different, the actual game-wise chances, because we're not rolling so many dice in the game, you only have like 5 turns to shoot the ballistas, and it is very likely that the first 2 turns where you really need to shoot it are going to be those 4s and 5s instead of the 3s and 4s that you have rolled. So with +1 to wound against some targets like the elite infantry or lighter vehicles, you will be wounding them on 2s, and 2s is important because then if you have something like a combi weapon lieutenant in the army, it can be 2s reroll in 1s, meaning almost automatic wounds. Notably, the +1 to wound also applies to the frag and the stormbolters on the dreadnought, so it's very likely that you're going to get some extra efficiency against horde armies, which is something that the meta might shift to if we see a resurgence of all the tanks and dreadnoughts, and some people may just say, well, screw that, I'm gonna do 120 bodies. If that happens, you have a tool against that as well. Overall, 3 Ballistas is an amazing way to get good shooting into a Space Marine list. I'm still not completely convinced that 3 Ballistas is enough, and you should have some other ways to do damage to tough things at range, but this is not bad, and at 390 points for 3, I'm happy with where Ballistas is now and could possibly run them in my lists as well. Second place are Hellblasters. So I was waiting for the Hellblasters to become cheaper, because this is usually the direction GW goes with such units. And I don't really like the idea of them being cheap because, well, what they did with them now is much better. The Hellblasters should not feel like a slightly more expensive intercessor with a laser pointer plasma rifle that doesn't do much. It should be a lethal and quite universal shooting asset, and that's exactly what they become now that they have +1 to wound. With New Oath, a 10-man unit does exactly 12 wounds to a toughness 12 2+ save tank, without cover though, but still not bad. Like a 3+ save tank can cover the same thing. You also give them a Lieutenant, it's 15 damage, and Lieutenant is not a bad idea to run with the Hellblasters, because depending on the detachment you're running, you might not have access to fall back and shoot, and that's exactly what you want. You don't want your Hellblaster squad, even if it's a depleted squad, to be just stuck in combat. They're not really good there. And if you give them sustain once, it's essentially the same thing, 14.8 wounds to a toughness 12 2+ save tank, or 11 wounds if it's the same tank but in cover. You still get a pretty useful defensive ability to shoot shoot on death on 3s, meaning that on the turn where you need to expose your big unit and there's no way for you to make the angle awkward for your opponent, you just need to come out in the open and shoot something. You hopefully will delete that unit from the board, but you will be hit back. And if your unit gets knocked out, you will still get to shoot about 66% of your dead squad, which is not bad considering that the thing that came out might be something soft and not as durable, and if your opponent is not careful, it can be something that they really did not want to lose at that point of the game. It's unlikely to be all targets though, so it's not going to be as efficient as what we've just seen against tanks, but still the Hellblasters, even without any extra buffs, they shoot reasonably good against, especially against the targets that usually like to kill Primaris Marines, which are like something like other infantry unit. You can also put them into a repulsor to make them faster, so they are more likely to get where they're going. They have 24-inch range and assault, so they have quite a long threat range, but still a 12-inch moving transport with 3-inch disembark and then 24-inch range guns is going to be better than that. And of course, durability that you get from being inside a repulsor is also a very nice bonus. You also get protection from the melee matchups, because those armies that don't really know how to shoot well, but they sure as hell know how to fight, will not like the fact that you can disembark your Hellblasters from the repulsor and then jump back into repulsor if the unit within 6 of the repulsor gets charged. Hellblasters, meaning. So overall, I'm very happy about the Hellblasters, and I'm happy that this is where they end up now. They should be a dangerous unit. They should feel like you're paying those points, though, 230 points for 10, for something that will delete almost anything your opponent has, or at least do a lot of damage, and that's where they are now. Next are Sternguard veterans. I've been waiting for so long for these guys to be good, because I don't know about you guys, but something about a veteran intercessor like Marine with a bolt rifle that shoots incredibly well, so well in fact that they can do damage against any kinds of targets just because of how accurate and tactical they are, is very appealing to me. And that's why I'm so happy about the Sternguard receiving the buffs that they had. So they benefit massively from the new oath, because wounding on 5s and 4s is much better than wounding on 5s and 6s. And in addition to that, in addition to being able to use the +1 to wound from the new oath, they now get to reroll their wound roll as well, in addition to the reroll hit roll they get from Oath anyways. And that means they reroll all hits, they reroll all wounds, and they have devastating wounds, so they do dev wounds on 6s, and in the new Libraries Conclave they can also do dev wounds on 5s, but I still think that Gladius would be better than that detachment, but that's a topic for another discussion. Meaning that you can now fish for 6s on your wound roll, and believe me, it's a big deal, because they do have 20 shots with the rifles, or like 16 shots and a couple of heavy bolters, which is what you're gonna take anyways, because you can take a heavy bolter per 5, so you'll have 2 heavy bolters in the unit. And if you're in rapid fire, that 20 shots becomes 30 shots, and against a toughness 12 2+ save tank in cover, they will do about 9 damage. So they would kill 3/4 of a tank, which is impressive for a unit that is only 200 points in cost. That's only just, what, 40 points more expensive than the 10-man unit of intercessors, and intercessors are sure as hell are not doing 9 damage to a toughness 12 tank in cover at 24-inch range, and it's amazing. And this same unit will do about 12 wounds to the same tank if they are in rapid fire, and they can advance and shoot as well, so they are capable of getting within that range by like turn 2 or 3. So I'm really impressed by the Sternguard, and I'm thinking that running a couple of these units might not be that bad of an idea, and running one is almost could be considered a must-have. So I'm really happy. Also kill about 4 Terminators, because like a toughness 12 tank is by far the worst target you can imagine for them, where something that has an invulnerable save that devastating ones don't care about and is lower toughness is even better. So 4 Terminators is a great result. 8 Marines is what they kill in terms of like the 2 wound models. The universally applicable profile that they have is amazing, and I'm really, really interested in what we're gonna see about the Sternguard in the coming months in the meta. if people are going to acknowledge them being great or not. They also punch mildly okay in combat because they have a special weapon on the sergeant and also have quite a lot of attacks that they can just punch with their legs and arms. So something like witches or Kabbalite warriors, something toughness 3, will not like being charged by the stern guard. Anything else doesn't really care. Overall, massive glow up for them, and I'm sure as hell painting up 10 for my Deathwatch. They are such a perfect vessel for any kinds of conversions or kit bashing, and that's exactly what I like to do with my Deathwatch. Check out my Deathwatch 8,000 points collection video on the channel if you want to see how diverse my Deathwatch Marines are. And we're moving on to the second place. The second place is himself, Gilman, or as one of my Patreon subscribers likes to call him, Master Barry, which is a very funny name, I think. I do pay 345 points for him now, so he's no longer as cheap as he was before, but I always thought that Primarchs should not be cheap. Primarchs is not a thing you add into your list and like don't feel it. They should take a big chunk of your force out, but they should be a force multiplier like no other, and that is exactly what Gilman is now. Now can use 2 of his Primarch abilities every round instead of 1, meaning that you can do both free stratagem every turn and double oath, which double oath is now doubly powerful, so it's like a quadruple added bonus for him, because being able to apply reroll hits and +1 to wound to 2 targets in your opponent's army is exactly what you need, because a good army usually is able to engage multiple targets at the same time, and if several things in your opponent's army are gonna get marked by this amazing buff, it's going to make your force so much more lethal. It's hard to even imagine. And of course, having 2 extra command points every battle round, because remember, he gives a free stratagem every turn, not every round, meaning that you get to use 1 in your opponent's turn and 1 in your own turn, which is extra 2 stratagems per round or extra 10 CPs in the game. I personally rate him now higher than Marnius Calgar, because Calgar is now 200 points, and yeah, 200 points is much less than 145, and you also get 3 models with Calgar's 200 points, where Gilman is only 1. But the extra CP that Calgar gives you is gonna counteract your CP that you get with the tactical cards that you can discard, where Gilman's ability doesn't. So you still can have the free stratagem with Gilman and then get an extra command point if you discard a card. So that's why, in my personal opinion, Calgar and Gilman, you could run them together. They're still a great pair, but it's a lot of points. It's like 545 points for just 2 characters, and I would probably usually run just Gilman and then Calgar in some lists where Gilman is not really applicable. This ability now makes him a real command and control node for your army, where you can just park him in a ruin somewhere in no man's land close to your deployment zone, where he can just advance to. With his 8-inch move and advance, it's relatively easy to maneuver him now that he can actually walk through ruins after the last Balance Dataslate, and there he will sit for the duration of your game, probably until turn 3, where by turn 3 you probably should have removed a big chunk of your opponent's army, and there is little to no threat to him, where he can then walk out, being still protected by the lone op from any kind of infantry unit that is hanging around, like scouts or whatever. It can be even a lone op lieutenant, because even though he is a lone op, does not counteract the fact that Rabute gets blown up from him. Once the opponent's army is almost destroyed, he can walk out and punch something in the face, victoriously finishing off that battle. He's also not bad in combat, don't get me wrong. He's 14 attacks at strength 8, AP 3 damage 2 with dev wounds, and 7 attacks I should say, at 14 AP 4 damage 4 with lethal hits. On average, he flips a toughness 12 2+ save tank reliably in the fight, and he is pretty good against numerous targets. He's not that efficient against Terminators because his damage 2 is gonna be consumed by them, but if you're fighting something like a 4-wound Terminator, that becomes pretty good. His resurrection ability is still annoyingly unpredictable, which means that you should probably just forget that it exists and play him as if he did not have that ability, but believe me, your opponent will remember it, and the fact that you have a resurrect on Gilman will be an annoying thing for them to take into account, and if you play him defensively, like he doesn't have one, and sometimes you'll just mess up. He has a 66% chance of coming back with 6 wounds, which is going to feel like a present from the Emperor himself. Overall, I don't see a reason why anyone who plays Ultramarines would not use Gilman now, because he just makes your army much better, and he is still a monster with 10 wounds, toughness 9, 2+ save, 4+ invulnerable save. He is reasonably durable, and he's very dangerous in combat, which if you're playing something like Gladius, you can advance him out of the ruin 8 inches. He moves, and then he advances something, and then he charges. He's very dangerous. So you're not just paying for the buffs, you're also getting a really powerful model. So yeah, Gilman for the win. Last but not least, my favorite Redemptors. If you know my channel, you know I am a Redemptor fan, and for a good reason, because they are one of few units that Space Marines have access to that are truly universal in their applicability. They fight well, they shoot better than they fight, and they're durable, and they move relatively quickly for a Dreadnought, which is 8 inches. Ask Custodes Dreadnoughts that needed a special detachment to make them move 8. 210 points is quite steep. It's not cheap, don't get me wrong, but they are not prohibitively expensive. Even if you buy 3 Redemptors, you will still have a good portion of your army to play with, more than 2/3. My humble opinion, the only thing that Redemptors lacked was easy access to +1 to wound against their chosen target, because as soon as the Macroplasma Incinerator starts wounding on 5s, it stops being reliable. The 3 Redemptors, they still did kill a full tank with the 3 of them with full rerolls to hit if you account with all the guns, so if you're within 24-inch range. But if you were only shooting the Macroplasma, you weren't killing a whole tank, or were like really close to not killing it, which is not what you want from such a big points investment. And if you're buying 3 Redemptors, problem was you did not really have the points for a good reliable anti-tank somewhere else. You could fit it, but it was a tight squeeze, so you really wanted to have the +1 to wound on 4s against anything in the game, and it is a much better experience. You could do the Stormspeeder Hammer Strike, but the problem with that is you pay 160 points on top of the 630 you were paying for the 3 Redemptors, and then the Stormspeeder becomes the target number 1 for your opponent, because it needs to see the target that it's shooting in order to apply the +1 to wound, meaning that you will probably lose your Stormspeeder turn 2, so you will get only 1 activation of your all Redemptors with the +1, and then they're back to being not as great in the shooting. So yeah, there was not really a one great solution for that. The new Dark Angels Detachment Lion's Blade solves that partially for them, because they get another choice of +1 to wound. But now that we get the new Oath, I really seriously think that Redemptors are back to being one of the best units that Space Marines have access to. Redemptors are also just a menace for any kind of heavy infantry, especially Terminators that are expensive. So like they do well against even the Deathwing Knights, which almost nothing in the game does well against, but the damage 3 that goes down to 2 will reliably kill, will kill a Deathwing Knight every 2 failed saves. And you will give them a lot of saves, because the Macroplasma is D6+1 shots, so blast, it's gonna be a lot of shots. And with the Gatling, the Bolters, the Blast and the Plasma, and the Icarus on top, they're still not bad against more numerous targets. The worsened Armor of Contempt that we now have is annoying, I won't lie, but it won't change the fact that Redemptor is one of the most durable units that Space Marines have access to in general. And they also take the detachment buffs incredibly well. So Gladius, Liberator Assault Group, and Iron Storm are all very, very good for the Redemptors. Obviously, Lag really wants you to run the Blood Angels units, which means that you're not gonna get the +1 to wound, but still, if you are trying to build a Blood Angels without Blood Angels list, and you're gonna have Redemptors there, the Redemptors fight much better when they have an extra attack and extra strength. So, I don't know about you, but I am back to running 3 Redemptors in every single Space Marine list that I run, except for the ones that are with special non-Codex compliant chapters like Black Templars or Blood Angels. For everyone else, 3 Redemptors are gonna be a mainstay, at least for now. I hope they're not gonna make them more expensive, because I don't really feel like they should be more expensive. 210 points is quite expensive, but for the price currently, I am very happy with them. I hope that you are as well. Let me know what you think about the new Balance Dataslate, what other units that you are very happy about. I have a couple of other videos that are coming out that are going to talk about the units that received buffs in the Balance Dataslate, so this is just one of the top 5s that you're going to see. You might have not seen some unit that you feel like is amazing now, and you probably will see it in the upcoming videos. So tell me about the units that you feel like are amazing now. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.